What's good, everyone, and welcome back to Kaya's Commentary. And if you're new here, welcome to Kaya's Commentary. This is a podcast that offers commentary on pop culture topics, real world issues, anything in between, and maybe even some advice every now and then. Before we get down to it, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Kaya R. Pennington, and you can follow Kaya's Commentary on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Kaya's Commentary. Also, be sure to hit that follow/subscribe button, leave likes, leave comments. It helps a lot, and I really appreciate it. With that, let's kick into our first segment, What's Trending, where I give my commentary on something I've seen trending. So, the new Warner Brothers Flash movie is dropping in another week or so, and I saw the trailer floating by on my Twitter feed, but I have been ignoring it. And then recently I saw it being promoted on TV, actual TV. And I just want to give my commentary on this movie really quickly, the idea of this movie really quickly, and then we'll kick it into our next segment. So, for those that do not know, Ezra Miller, who plays the Flash, whose pronouns are they, them, never respect that, they have gotten into a lot of trouble, and not even like fluff. I mean, actual trouble with the law over these last few years. They have been arrested. I don't think they've been like charged or anything. Like I don't think they have any open court dates or anything. But on two separate accounts, I believe they have assaulted women. Once with a chair. Accusations of cult-like behavior with someone's daughter, having drugs around said minor. They've been really terrorizing the people of Hawaii and taunting police about it. Now, I will say this, the last thing I heard about them, they were seeking treatment and rehab to get better. But a lot has happened for them to still be at the head of this movie. This movie very much still stars Ezra Miller as the Flash. And now this could be just rumor, but I've also seen it pop up, float around how no matter which way this movie goes, be it succeeds or fails, Ezra Miller will continue playing the Flash. No one else can do it like he does. They do apparently, and it's like, is that true? Because Grant Gustin has been playing the Flash for like 9 years, regardless of the writing. He has, right? And not to say go get him, he deserves a break from the Flash. Voice actors who have played the Flash, it has to be Ezra Miller. And I know it costs money to reshoot this, and they say that the only reason they're going through with this is because it did well in front of a test audience. Who was this test audience, by the way? Did they know about Ezra Miller's incidents? Do they just don't care at all, huh? Like, y'all don't feel weird that this person has gotten into so much trouble taunting police about it, and you as a studio exec you don't care? Now, this is not to be like some Johnny Depp love type thing, but Johnny Depp got accused of some stuff. And even before that whole thing went to court and all of that, that mere accusation, Johnny Depp, who I would argue is very much bigger than Ezra Miller, he was in the Fantastic Beasts, right? He was the main villain in the Fantastic Beasts. Stuff started popping out, mere allegations at this point, didn't know anything about it, just the allegation. And execs were like, maybe you should step down. And he was like, okay. Ezra Miller, there's video, there's a whole trail of assaults and allegations against this person, and they just the only one who could play the Flash. Again, not to be like on some Johnny Depp love type stuff, but what's the difference? Because I would argue that Johnny Depp is way bigger, and y'all were not hesitant to, maybe they weren't. I don't know. My point still stands. Like, what does this person have on you? Because that's what it is, right? They have to know somebody who has something on you. Maybe it's nepotism, or they have something on y'all specifically. Because, like, be it succeed, again, that's a rumor, but be it succeeds or fails, they still have a job as the Flash. What do they have on y'all? And again, last I heard about them, they were seeking treatment, but it's not like this was this is not like it was a few bar fights or um under the influence in a place that they should not be, right? They have assault charges against them. I don't know if that's going to go to trial. I don't know if that's standing or anything, but like they've been accused of doing, allegedly have done some real messed up stuff. I don't know if rehab, maybe a rehabilitation center in jail, maybe, um I don't know about a rehab center that's just gonna quote unquote cure, and maybe it is a mental illness, but or something of that nature. But even that does not take away, that does not give you the right, just you don't get to say I have a mental illness, which is why I acted this way. Like on that level anyway, right? There's still going to be consequences to that, you know? Um, do you think you're going to be perceived as anti-LGBTQ plus if you fire them because they're non-binary? Because I don't know. I don't think that's how that works. I don't think, given all their um, alleged behavior, I don't think that would be an issue. I don't think you would be considered anti. Like they have to have something on you. Again, I know it costs money to reshoot and all of that, but y'all remember that Batgirl that we were promised and just never got because they had filmed it, edited, done all the production on it, all of that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it did pretty well with test audience, or rather, they might have said it didn't do well with test audience, but everybody else was really hyped to see it. And then they just scrapped it. How much money did that cost you? How much money is this writer's strike costing you? Like, and maybe that's why they just going ahead and doing this because they need the funds. Because I'm sure this movie will make its money back. I have no doubt. A lot of people who want to see it but don't want to acknowledge that they want to see it because they don't want to be judged are going to be like, oh, but a lot of people worked on this film, so they deserve to get paid. That's not how that works, by the way. They already got their check. I'm sure it will make its money back, but it's just like, at what cost? They the only person that can play the Flash. Didn't y'all replace Henry Cavill as Superman? Like, didn't y'all? Did you not? Like, but Ezra Miller. I don't know much about Ezra Miller as far as like an actor. I don't know what they've been in. I can tell you. So to me, I perceive Henry Cavill and Johnny Depp as being bigger stars than Ezra Miller. Far more talented. I know that's controversial to say about Depp, but like compared to Miller. But I also will say this. Let me take that back because I don't know anything about Ezra Miller like being an actor outside of this. Uh, but you can't tell me they're that talented that they breathe Barry Allen or whichever version of the Flash that they are supposed to be playing. Like it just doesn't. And like I'm sorry. It's just wild to me. It was really a shock to see it on TV again. I've been seeing the trailer on my Twitter feed and I've been scrolling past. I have no interest to see it. And this, even before all this Ezra Miller stuff started happening, I don't believe I've really been into the Justice League that they're doing and the characters that they're doing. The last DC superhero movie that I saw was Suicide Squad and then The Suicide Squad. Outside of that, but as far as like Justice League, I didn't see Batman versus Superman. I think it is so. I know a lot of people think it is so cool to see their favorite superheroes going up against each other and who would beat the other one. And maybe that works in comics, but you take it in movies, and it's just like I think it's so stupid to see two superheroes fighting against each other because at the end of the day, y'all just proving the government right that neither one of y'all can be trusted and both of y'all need to be controlled. Like you beat Superman, and then what? Now we got to control you because you beat a freaking alien. Like, that's a whole other thing. It's wild. It is really wild to me to see the trailer on TV. Like, I know they were going forward with it. There are rumors that they're saying be this succeed or fail. Ezra Miller is still the Flash, but seeing it on my TV is like, y'all ain't got no shame, huh? Like, wow, that really cemented it for me. I'm sure it's gonna make its money back, but it's just wow, y'all, no shame. With that, let's kick it into our next segment. Let's go to the movies, where I give my commentary on a movie I've seen. Today's movie, the 1999 film Wild Wild West. I believe it's the 1999 film. And I would say it is loosely, very loosely based on the 1960s, I believe, The Wild Wild West TV show that followed Jim West, and Artemis Artie Gordon. And they're two Secret Service agents roaming from town to town on assignments from the president, trying to keep him safe, trying to keep the US government safe. It's a really interesting show, I would say. I'm sure, like any old Western, it's probably problematic. I obviously didn't grow up with it, but I grew up with it. For anybody that had MeTV or just anyone like grandparents or people in their family that likes old Westerns and constantly had that playing in the background, yeah, some of those storylines drew me in. I honestly, though, I've never seen the season premiere of like the very first episode of the Wild Wild West. I'm betting it's nothing like this movie though. But I'm betting it's problematic all the same, or it has problematic elements all the same. But it was something I grew up on, something I look back fondly as far as like watching Westerns go. I have a few old Westerns in my roster that I like to watch that I'm not gonna name names because they are all problematic, and that's just something you have to take at face value. There's just some episodes that you just have to skip because you're like, that makes me uncomfy to watch, and then other episodes that you're just like, it can play in the background. So that's really the basic story of premise of the Wild Wild West. Like I said, I would very loosely consider a movie adaptation. Same characters, Jim West and Artemis Artie Gordon. This movie stars Will Smith, Kevin Kline, and Selma Hayek. Pretty big stars at the time. And Jim West. His name is James West, but they call him Jim. It's just going to go back and forth with me. Jim is Black. And so this is post Civil War. He was a Civil War hero, but it's post Civil War. So he does get treated like a Black person in America post Civil War. He sometimes uses that to his advantage. Jim is he's a no nonsense, shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy. Artie is a inventor. He prefers not to use guns or even to ride horses. He finds it all primitive, as he says in this film. He has a bike that he uses. He prefers to use science to get over on the villain. So the movie starts off and we see a scientist running. They have a magnetic collar attached to their throat, and a blade is coming after them. And the magnetic collar is calling the blade. So he's trying to outrun that. He can't outrun it, gets his head cut off. We see villain one, Bloodbath McGrath, they call him. And so he's just there to make sure that the scientist died. Then we see Artemis Artie Gordon. Now, Artie is a master of disguise. Actually, we see Jim first. Jim is sharing an evening with a lady friend in a water well. I don't know how they got up there. I don't know if that's drinking water, but there it be. And so he's actually been hiding out near this water well, not necessarily in it, for a while, waiting for Bloodbath McGrath's men to transport something. He feels like they're doing stuff, so he's on the watch, and they do show up. And so he's like, of all the days of all the time. Lady friend is like, are you working? Because this is me time. You're not supposed to be working. And he's like, no, I'm not working. He's working. And so they have a carriage. The carriage kind of knocks into the leg of the well, knocks the well down. Water comes crashing out. Jim comes crashing down. Lady friend somehow manages to stay up there. Don't know what she got caught on. Um, Comes crashing down. They get into a little scuffle, Jim and the Bloodbath McGrath's men. And then Lady finally falls down. Along with his clothes, he puts his clothes on and he jumps on the carriage that they were transporting. They were transporting Nitro. So from here, we cut to Artie. He's a master of disguise. So they're in a fun house. I don't know if I can pleasure house, fun house, take that for what you will. And he's dressed up as a woman and he's trying to catch Bloodbath McGrath's attention. He does, he gets him alone in a room. And from here, he kind of hypnotizes him to be like, okay, who are the scientists in the next room? What are they working on? Who did you kidnap them for? So Artie is U.S. Marshal. Yes, Artie is U.S. Marshal, and he's looking into disappearing scientists. Jim is U.S. Army, and he is really kind of out for vengeance. So there was a city called New Liberty, and it was a settlement of free and formerly enslaved Black people. So there was this machine that came in. Bloodbath McGrath was there. That's why they call him Bloodbath McGrath, because of the massacre of this settlement. He comes in with this machine, and it has like a swivel head, 360 cannon type head, and it massacres the entire settlement. No one survives, including Jim's parents. Jim's parents were out said settlement, and they don't survive either. So he is out for retribution. So that's why he's chasing Bloodbath McGrath. He ends up at the fun house, and he comes crashing through the window. He and McGrath get into it before McGrath gets away with the scientists, and Jim and Artie kind of get into a scuffle before Jim is like, okay, lady, get out of my way. Artie's like, I'm not a lady, I'm U.S. Marshal. And he's like, I'm U.S. Army. Now what? The Nitro is coming full steam ahead into the fun house, and it hits and it blows up. And then we cut to the theme song. I believe it's the same theme song as the TV series, but they add somewhere in there is another track. Then we get to the White House. So Jim and Artie are on their way to the White House separately. Now, like I said, post-Civil War, so Jim is still treated, even though he's a war hero, even though he's employed by Grant, he is still treated like a Black person post-Civil War. So he strolls up in the White House. You got one agent that's like, hey, yo, wait a minute now. Winning that war may have got you 40 acres and a mule, but you can't just stroll up in here trying to see the president. Give me your guns. So Jim hands over one gun and then pulls out another, and he's like, what about that? Yeah. So Grant calls Jim in. He's like, don't make Captain West any later than he already is. They get to talking. Jim notices that something is off, and he's like, you're not the president. Who are you? I am the president. And then Jim shoots up at the ceiling. Who are you? I am the president. Jim aims the gun at the imposter, and he's like, okay, wait, I'm Artemis Gordon, master of disguise. Actual president comes in, and he's like, what are y'all doing? And Artie is like, I was just trying to show you how easy it would be to impersonate you. And this is something that I did not know. So Kevin Kline plays Artie, and then he occasionally plays Artie playing Ulysses S. Grant, but he also plays Ulysses S. Grant. Now, I didn't know that he played the president, which stupid me, because like, of course, looking at it now, when I was watching this the other night to review this, it was like the way it's the same person standing side by side, and there's a clear split between. Anyway, Grant is like, okay, we have missing scientists. I got a message from some madman talking about we need to surrender the U.S. government. Y'all are working the same case. You're tracking McGrath. You believe, Jim, you're tracking McGrath. Artie, you believe that McGrath is a servant. He's not a mastermind. So you're tracking somebody who is above McGrath. Y'all work in the same case. Therefore, I'm going to put you on as the same case. Whatever differences you have, settle them. I don't care. You have 6 days, you have a week, dismissed. So they're making their way to the train that they've been assigned to track McGrath. And I guess this is Artie's train because it has all his inventions. So he gets to the train first and he takes off without Jim. And Jim is like, hey, stop the train. He's chasing after the train on a horse. He's like, stop the train. He finally manages to get on the train. He and Artie have a scuffle, which then leads Jim to being tied down to the pool table, courtesy of one of Artie's inventions, and flipped so that he is under the train. And then while under the train, Jim pulls a lever and Artie is flipped under the train. The conductor has to pull them back above board. And he's like, chill out. Okay, let's be about our president's business. Quit the funny business. Where are we headed? Louisiana. They track McGrath to Louisiana to a ball. So again, Artie is the master of disguise. So he's like, okay, we need a disguise to get in. Jim is like, no, I'm gonna go as a US agent. Artie is like, you're gonna go as a Black US agent at a ball that's completely surrounded by white conservatives, Confederates rather, same difference. Confederates, former slave owners. Ingenious. Let me know how that works out for you. And so they get there. Jim goes as himself. Artie goes in disguise. So I guess they end up going their separate ways when they get off the train because Jim does not know which disguise Artie is in. Jim meets and it kind of gets into the dragon lady. Like, this movie is by no means perfect. It does hold up to the same weird values, problematic values as I'm sure the TV show did. But I think that might have been a point to do so. Now, she's one of Loveless, Dr. Arliss Loveless girls. Now, Loveless is the mastermind. So he shows up. He and Jim have a little spat before he rolls away. He's half of a person, literally. He's just the top part of a person. And so he's in a wheelchair that's mechanical. He's a scientist as well. So here Jim gets the information that he needs. He goes to find Artie. He mistakenly thinks that he is a woman, dressed up as a woman. So he's talking to a woman and kind of gropes her. So you got she shrieks, she gasps, she slaps him. All these white people, Confederates, are like, oh no, we gotta teach you how to behave in polite society. So they nearly tie him to a tree. He gets out of it. Now, Artie has been dressed up as somebody else, so as a distraction, he sees what's going on. He has a rope and he's like, hang him. So he throws the rope, but it's actually a string rope. He goes looking for what he needs to look for. He finds Rita. He helps her out, and then they all get away. They make their way after McGrath. They find him. They don't find him right away. So McGrath and Loveless are talking, and they are in a field with McGrath's men, and Loveless uses the same machine that he used at the New Liberty massacre on McGrath's men, thus turning McGrath on Loveless. Loveless kills him, and then he and his gang roll away, and West rolls up a few minutes later, followed by Artie and Rita. West finds McGrath and he's like, where are they headed? I thought I was going to have they get into, oh, I thought I was going to kill you first. Ha, ha, ha. Look at you. This you threw your hat in this and now it's like that. And so McGrath, with his dying breath, is like, actually, it was Loveless who killed the people at New Liberty, not me. Well, where is he headed? And then he dies before he can tell him. Rita discloses that information. She's like, they're headed to Utah, but you got to help me out. I'm trying to find my dad, Dr. Scientist Escobar. If you could help me out. They leave her at the station anyway, but she finds her way on the train, and we're moving along. We're trailing after Loveless. Somehow they come together again, and Loveless ends up getting the better of them. He has them out in a field with the magnetic collar around them. He releases the blades. They're running through a field trying to get rid of the magnetism, and they can't. They're just trying to outrun the blades, and it's no point until they see a gully. And Jim is like, let's jump in the gully. They jump in the gully. The blades hit each other and explode. This is all a fast forward version, of course. Trying to get through so I can get to my thoughts on the movie. So they have a little bit more of a spat because throughout this entire movie, Jim and Artie's methods have been clashing. And so the reason they ended up being chased by the blades were because they were surrounded by this metal bar, this metal wire. And if they stayed in the wire, they'd be safe. But if they left it, blades would come. Jim, being the shoot first, ask question later type cowboy, he exits the wired bar and releases the blades. So Artie is like, see, this is what I'm talking about. I have to, Jim is like, help me get this thing off. This is what you're here for. And Artie's like, no, I was trying to, but then you had to step outside the wire bar, and then we had to run through the cornfield and then jump into the gully with all this mud, and now here we are. So they start fighting or squabbling, and Artie ends up hitting Jim's magnetic collar with a rock, which reverses the magnetism, polarity, whatever the word is. And so now their magnets are no longer, they come together. So now they have to figure out how to separate themselves from each other. They figure it out. They find their train, and they are back to tracing Loveless. They find him in the desert. He has his own little town out in the desert, and this huge mechanical spider, and they're going to roll up on Ulysses S. Grant to take him hostage and get him to surrender the government. So they have to stop that. They don't intercept, they do find Loveless, but Loveless gets the better of them again. And so Artie is on board, but Jim has been shot in the chest and he falls to the ground. And so he ends up surviving because he has this what's the thing that not warlords, what's the thing, the piece of metal, y'all, the piece of metal that goes on the armor, and an impermeable, and Artie designed it so that it could survive a shooting of a close range, right? So he survives the fall. He goes looking after Loveless. He goes back to his train, but they've taken the train, and they took all the gadgets out of it. So the only thing left is a small gun with a small bullet and a disguise. So Jim dresses up in said disguise. He gets the gun to Artie, but Loveless still gets Grant. He ends up kidnapping Grant again, and they have one final battle on this giant spider. And at the end of it all, Jim gets the better of Loveless, and he finally gets the killer of the New Liberty Massacre. Everything gets resolved. That's just a basic overview. I just really want to go on my thoughts really quick, because I'm sure this movie started out so seriously. I am sure with the way this was a huge cast, big time actors at the time, even now today, perhaps, I'm sure it started out something really serious. I'm sure it actually started out as a movie adaptation of the Wild Wild West TV show. But then it started going through a lot of rewrites to make it a little more comical, because test audience weren't sure if it was a comedy or not. So they added a lot more humor in it. And I know a lot of the two main writers who were working on this, they did not know about all these rewrites. And so they were rightfully upset. And I think it led to them not really working with studio execs for a while, which, given this writer strike, maybe isn't such a bad thing. But this final product was certainly nothing to be taken seriously. And that's a good thing. I don't know how this was marketed. Maybe it was marketed as a actual Western action. I believe in the trailer they do show a lot of the comedy. In which case, why y'all just didn't take this at face value? It's a Western comedy parody. Maybe that's what it should have been more accurately described. That this is not a bad movie at all, by no means. If you just don't take it too seriously, like, and also a lot of people were really, I'm sure a lot of people, especially given that this started out as an adaptation of the Wild Wild West, a lot of people were upset that Jim West was turned into a black character because racist haters gonna racistly hate. But honestly, Men in Black, Independence Day, Bad Boys, you telling me you could not see, just change the settings to a Western, you couldn't see action star Will Smith doing a Western? Be so for real. There was nothing wrong with making Jim West black because his race wasn't commentary for another time. This movie just should not have been taken so seriously. You'll see now a lot of the actors, you'll ask them about this movie and they say it was the worst movie they ever done. They should have never done it. I think as of 2021, Will Smith was like, yes, gotta be my worst film ever. Um, it didn't have to be. It did not have to be. I don't really know how this was marketed, but like as a comedy set in a Western that's kind of parody-ish of Westerns, this was not bad. This was not bad. My only issue as far as like storytelling goes, the character of Rita, she did not have really much to do. So how it is often is in westerns is that the main character, you will more than likely have a sidekick. Artie and the original was the sidekick. Um, and the main cowboy always gets the women. And that's kind of how it was here. Like every woman wants the main cowboy. They often fall in love with him, and then you realize it's a cross. They were double crossing him, but then double cross the double cross because they actually ended up falling and liking or in loving with him. And that's kind of what they started doing here. Rita was playing both Artie and Gordon, Artie and Jim. Um, she was supposed to be one of Loveless's girls. Now Loveless has three major women who are his team, right? So she was supposed to be one of them. But then we find her in a cage and Artie rescues her. She rides with them. But then when Loveless finally catches up to him, they make it such a big thing about him catching up to Rita. Like he's gonna take her back, kidnap her back. And she ends up going back with him. They don't know she willingly went back with him, but she ends up going back with Loveless. And he's like, I'm so curious as to how you got on that train anyway with them. And she's like, well, they were so sure that they could find you that I thought if I stayed with them, it would bring me back to all my friends. Not to give you a big head, but I kind of missed you, suggesting that she's one of his girls, right? And then at the end of the film, we don't see her behaving like one of his girls. Like she's sitting down, supposed to be in chains or cuffed or whatever, along with the conductor, Artie, and Grant. But she's in one of the girls' outfits, right? Like that uniform. But they didn't make that clear. They didn't make that clear. They just threw that in there just because that's a trope in Western, but they didn't make it clear as to what her purpose would be for working with Loveless in the first place, for double crossing and then double crossing the double cross. She's actually looking for her father. Escobar is actually her husband, Escobar, and she didn't really have to tell them it was her daddy. I mean, like she didn't have to tell them it was her husband either. She could have just said, I'm looking for Escobar and I need your help, because that's what she tells them. That's what she tells Jim and Artie to kind of get them to trust her, to let her in as to why she's around Loveless. She was around Loveless trying to get to her dad, but it's not her dad, it's her fiance, her husband. But you didn't have to lie to them like that. She lied because she knew she had the power of persuasion as a pretty woman, right? But it's like they would have still helped you without the, this is my dad. Actually, no, it's not my dad, it's my fiance, my husband. Like you didn't have to lie to them. Like overall, I think her character was done dirtiest. And even Selma Hayek, her criticism of the film was like she felt like she was underused. That would be a fair assessment, because even if you wanted to do something different from that trope of the beautiful woman double crossing, whatever, what have you, you didn't, because you went there, but you didn't. That would be my only real issue as far as storytelling. Artie and Jim, as far as like a mismatched team going up against it was funny to watch because they had their funny moments. Comedy was a little raunchy at times, but it worked. Like 7.5, 7.5 out of 10, 7 to 7.5 out of 10. This movie is not that bad. Just don't take it too seriously. They give Jim depth as to why he's tracing Loveless, his time as a enslaved person, the fact that they acknowledged that as opposed to just being like, here's a random black cowboy, like, like 7.5 out of 10. It's not bad. Just don't take it too seriously. Take it at face value. And it's a mess. It's a mess, but it's a mess that I love. Now, granted, again, I like crappy movies, bad movies, movie society has deemed bad, but like, I just do not feel like this is a bad movie. I just think take it at face value. It's a parody-ish Western. Like, it's a little messy, it's a little all over the place, but at the end of the day, it's not that bad. To have won 5 Razzies, no. To be like, this is the worst thing I've ever done as an actor, no. Like, turn it around, flip it around, laugh with people. Like, this is something you just don't take too seriously at the end of the day. 7 to 7.5 out of 10. With that, let's kick it into our next segment, Unpopular Opinions, where I give my commentary on an unpopular opinion that I have. I don't really know how unpopular or quote-unquote controversial this is, but a little while ago, I saw somebody say that Elementary, the CBS Elementary with Sherlock and Joan Watson, was propaganda. And I'm going to leave that in limbo because technically it is a show about them being cops and solving murders and whatnot. My unpopular opinion is that I feel like there are shows, there are cop shows that are propaganda, and then there are shows where they're just cops. Law and Order, propaganda, complete propaganda. Now, are they going to craft an interesting storyline? Yes. Are they going to bait the Bensler ship? Yes. Am I going to watch regardless? Yes. I am sorry, y'all. Propaganda, not some of them storylines, they really be hidden. And then the whole Bensler ship, it piqued my curiosity. Honestly, the way they dragging it now, though, it's like I'm of the mind either do it or don't, but pick one and follow through. And with that season finale a few weeks ago, it does seem like they decided that our time has passed, but in a parallel universe, it will always be you and I. But we'll see. But that's a propaganda show through and through. Criminal Minds could be said to be a cop show. NCIS, CSI, I haven't really watched those, like watch, but you could say at the very least they cop shows. But like shows like Sleepy Hollow or Lucifer, well, kind of with Lucifer, because it did start off about it being the devil solving crimes. Supernatural, if anyone has ever called that a cop show, specifically in fantasy shows where they just happen to be cops because it moves the plot forward as to why they would be on a scene solving a murder and why they are not messing up that scene that by being on the premise of the scene. It, like, you could make the argument, oh, but they could be EMTs or fighters and still be on the scene first, but I don't think it hits the same. Like it did, like maybe a PI, maybe a private investigator would be the best way to say to explain how these people can be on a crime scene first, realistically, logically be on a crime scene first and not be contaminating the evidence within a crime scene. Otherwise, I feel like there are cop shows, propagandic shows, and then there are shows where they're just cops because it advances the plot as to logically, reasonably, realistically, why people would be solving murders and why they are not contaminating the scene by being there. Maybe a private investigator would be the best way to go about that, but I'm gonna leave elementary in limbo, but it did spark a thought in me. I just don't think every show where they are cops is a propaganda show. I don't. I don't. There are cop shows, there are propaganda shows, and then there are shows where they just cops just to advance the plot forward. Like, that's just my opinion. That's just my 2 cents, my unpopular opinion, maybe. With that, let's kick it into our last segment, Book Icks, where I give my commentary on a book ick that I have. Today's book ick, selling horror as romance. Yeah, that sounds wild, don't it? But the thing that I've recently learned is there is a very, very fine, thin of a hair line between romance and horror, and a lot of people crossing into that horror. So, and I try so hard not to be on Book Talk, on Bookstagram, on Book Twitter, whatever, what have you. I do not take online recommendations on social media because y'all will come up with the most absolute cringe thing. And specifically on Bookstagram, that's what they doing. And this is why I firmly believe write your story, your screenplay, not, and this works both ways. On some hands, write it, but on some hands, don't if it's going to be this atrocity. But outside of that, write your screenplay, your novel, your TV series, your song, whatever creative project you have, because if that crap can sell, your stuff has to sell. On Bookstagram, I will see some of the most horrific excerpts, descriptions of stories. I saw one where it was like, y'all, I have to give y'all the real deal edited version, but basically she's on her cycle and they say the big O can help relieve cramps, which is true. But for some, but for others who just like me don't want to be touched at that time, no. And so the main female character says no. And the main male character says, say no to me again, and I'm a do something to you. And then he has this cringe line that's like, I've had a lot of blood on my hands before. Like, you just need therapy. Like, I saw another one where the kidnapper gets mad at the main character for running away. So when he catches up to that character, he starts sexually abusing them in front of their friend, and then their friend gets to join in. Like, I have tried so hard, and that's just two. I've seen some really horrific stuff, y'all. And I try so hard not to kink shame, because what gets you going is what gets you good. But I'm done with that. I am done with that. Like, y'all may have heard me on the internet say no kink shame. No. Some of y'all need therapy. Some of y'all need to be in jail. Some of y'all need to keep y'all fantasies in y'all head. Because some of this stuff, it just does not make sense. It's gross, it's abuse, it's horror. If you flipped it, all you had to do was just flip the genre, sell it as a horror, and it would be a horror. One person said this is a horror, and it would be a horror. Like, y'all know consent is sexy, right? Y'all know consent is okay. Consenting to things that can be consented to, like, yeah, you can consent to that way overboard stuff, but it's like you can consent to not way overboard stuff. You can still have your red room and it be not horror. Y'all be writing horror and selling it as romance, and it really irks me. On a serious note, it really irks me because it goes back into my disgust for romanticizing abuse and toxic relationships. Like, y'all are the people that read those toxic series back in the day and then wrote those toxic series, different versions of those toxic series now, because y'all think that's normal. It's not normal. Some of y'all need therapy. A lot of y'all need to keep y'all fantasies to yourself. A lot of y'all just don't need to be selling stuff. Like, and it's scary because you'll go into the comments and a lot of people be like, oh, where can I find this book? Like, you can only go so far, even in a dark romance or a mafia series. And y'all be passing that limit. Y'all be going straight to horror. Y'all need therapy. I'm shaming. I am. Keep some of y'all fantasies to yourself. Collect your coin, I guess. You can say I'm being a hater right now because at the end of the day, they collecting a coin, but like decorum, morals as you collect your coin. Y'all don't have it. Y'all need therapy. Y'all need therapy. With that, that's a book ick that I have. Selling romance is horror. Seek therapy. And that's Kaya's commentary. If you like this episode, do please like this episode. Leave likes, hit the thumbs up, leave comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts and opinions on any of the segments that I had. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know. Be respectful, but certainly let me know. Likes, comments, thoughts, all of that. With that, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. See you next week.